Welcome to the Soldotnalong. My name is Aurora and I will be bringing you a series of tech support videos that are going to show you the different knitting techniques that you need to make your very own Soldotna Crop by Caitlin Hunter. In this video, we are going to talk about swatching. And we're also going to introduce Colorwork because in order to swatch properly for a Colorwork sweater, you have to have a little bit of the Colorwork inside the swatch. Now, in this particular sweater, we are going to knit in the round. So traditionally when you make a swatch, you'll make a small rectangle or a square, just a couple of inches of the fabric in the needle that you're going to use and the yarn that you're going to use. What happens, however, when you work a swatch flat is that when you turn it over, you purl across. Now, in this particular project, we will not be purling, so your gauge is not going to be accurate. So instead, what we want to do is swatch in the round. Now, there's several videos out there that will show you how to swatch flat, but when you get to the end, you basically take the color and you drag it behind the work, and then you start again. So then you knit across, and then you have a big loop draping across the back, and then you knit across, and then you have a big loop draping across. Now, that's wonderful. However, when you go to block it, you have to take your scissors and you have to cut up all of the loops and then, get it wet and block it, and then you can measure it. I always have a hard time doing that because what if I run out of yarn? What if I need just a little bit more? Well, then I always have my swatch that I can go rip out and then add if I need to add a little bit. So even though it's a little more work and a little extra knitting, I like to actually do my swatch in the round. So I have cast on 80 stitches onto the size needles that the pattern calls for, and I've kind of started what basically looks like a little hat. So you can see here, I have what looks like the beginning of a hat. I just picked one of the colors of the yarn that I'm going to be using for this project, and I did a little 2x2 rib. And then I think it looks like I did like 2 rounds of just flat knitting right there. But now I want to introduce my Colorwork because when you go to measure your swatch, your gauge in Colorwork is going to be different than your gauge in just regular stockinette stitch. So we want to make sure and get a little bit of Colorwork in there. So I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to pull the pattern in, because this is the little piece that I have decided to test swatch. You'll notice that there are no increases in this little block, and there's also some nice gaps in between where these two colors are. So we have a color here, and then a color there, and a color here, and a color there. So this is really going to help us learn how to do our color work properly. So the first thing we need to do when we start our color work is learn how to read this chart. So we are going to start with row 22. Now when you read a chart, you go up this direction and you also go across this direction. So our very first stitch on this next round on our little mini hat is going to be 3 stitches of the color that I'm currently on. Then I'm going to do 2 stitches with the new color. Then I'm going to do 3 more stitches with the original color. Then I'm going to do 2 stitches of the new color. And I'm just going to repeat this over and over and over again until I get to my end of round marker. Now, this repeat is over 10 stitches, and since I cast on 80 stitches, I'll be able to do this 8 times. All right, let's pull this out of the way, and I'm going to show you how to introduce the new color. All right, so here's my little end of round marker. So we know from the pattern on row 22, we want to do 3 stitches in this original color. So we're just going to knit 1 and 2 and 3. Now it's time to introduce the new color. Here's the easiest way. I'm going to go as if I'm going to knit this stitch. I'm going to stick my right needle in there, and then I'm just going to leave it for a minute. Now I'm going to introduce my second color of yarn. And here's the end of it, and you've noticed that I've got it in the shape of a little loop. Once you have your right needle inserted into this stitch, you can just grab the loop, and you're going to hook it over the tip of the needle, just like that, and you're going to knit that stitch. And now you can see this stitch is with the new color. So now I'm going to drop my tail, which we will weave in later, and we'll tighten this stitch down later. Might be a little loose for a little while, that's all right. And now we're going to knit one more stitch in this color, just like that. Now I'm going to just drop this and I'm going to pick up the original color, which of course is waiting back over here for me. Here's where I left it. Okay, so I am going to go to knit this stitch, but there's something very important you need to know. You do not want to pull so hard on this thread that you drag this stitch to meet this stitch, because that's going to pinch these guys out of the work so that you won't see them. So you want to be nice and relaxed, and you just want to slowly drape over just like that. And then we're going to do that stitch, and then we're going to do another. So we've got 2 there, and we have to do 3 of the original. So there's 1, and then we're going to do 2, and then we're going to do 3. And now I'm going to just take this and I'm going to lay it in the front of the work so I know where it is. I'm going to grab the other color, and I'm going to get this out of the way so you can see here that this color, oh, don't grab the tail, that's just no fun for anyone. All right, you can see this color is waiting for me way back here. Now I have to stretch it across 3 stitches, so I even have to be even more careful. All right, so I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to make sure this is loosey-goosey. A lot of times if my stitches are all smashed up here like this, I will spread them out so that I have the length to make a nice long float across the back. I'm going to go around this one, and I'm going to knit 1, and then I'm going to knit 2. Let's put this in the front here so that we can turn this over and see what it looks like on the back. Okay, so you can see here is the float from the first color across 2 stitches, and here is the float from the second color across 3 stitches. See that? So you are going to have a whole back side of a bunch of these floats, and it's just very important that when you go across stitches, you leave it nice and relaxed so it isn't pulling and cinching your work tight. When you do that, your knitting will not stretch. So make sure and be nice and relaxed. Now I want to show you one other thing. Once you get going, you can get brave and try to, you can see I'm just kind of randomly opening my fingers and like weaving this one through like this. So I have 1 color in one hand and I have 1 color in the other. So I just did 2. Now I need to do 3 of the original color, which is in this hand. So now I'm going to very carefully and loosely knit that first one so it doesn't pinch. You can see these are still nice and spread out, so you know I did a good job. So 1 and 2 and 3, and then I'm going to knit 2. So I'm going to knit these 2 continental style, 1 and 2. Okay, and then I'm going to knit 1 and 2 and 3, and then I'm going to knit 1 and 2. So that's a little trick that you can do if you get brave. Now, please, if you're going to do this in your sweater, make sure you do it in your swatch. If you don't do it in your swatch and you're not familiar with continental, not a big deal. You don't have to knit with both hands, but be sure that you're consistent so that your gauge stays the same. Okay, let's take a look at the next row. So once we get all the way around on row 22, then we're going to start on row 23. We're going to do 2 stitches in this color, and then 2 in this one, and then 3 stitches, and then 2 more, and then just this 1. So each time you're going to go all the way around, and you're going to do rows 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. You're going to get all the way up to row 30. Once you get to row 30, I want you to do it a second time. Why? Not for torture, but because practice makes perfect. Muscle memory is a thing. Once you start to understand how the color work goes and you get used to doing it, you'll kind of relax a little, you'll snuggle into the couch and you'll keep moving. And then the second time you execute it will probably be a truer tension that you're going to get as you're relaxing and knitting your soldotna. So that will be the part that you want to measure. So I'm going to go ahead and rush ahead. I'm going to repeat that block of color work twice, and I'll meet you right back here. Okay guys, I got so excited over the last couple of days that I finished my swatch, and I even did ribbing and bound it off because I was so excited about this project. So I have this adorable little swatch. It looks like a little teeny cow for a little teeny person. The great thing about this swatch is that you had a chance to practice your color work in the pattern, okay? So now let's check out some of the characteristics of what color work looks like when it's done properly. The main thing that I want to show you is I'm not seeing any pinching here, okay? And by pinching, I mean, let's just flip this right side or wrong side out so we can see. That means that all of these little strands that float across the back, we call them floats, they are not so tight that they're pinching the work together like this to distort the pattern on the front side. Okay, we can see the pattern on the front side really nicely. Now you'll notice here that I've woven in all of the ends of this, but I've left some big long tails in case I need to pull out any of this yarn. If I run out at the very end of my sweater and I need a little more, I can rip out my swatch and then I've got a couple more yards. So on the back here, you'll notice that if I pull this, it stretches pretty nicely. It just moves a little bit. It's not so tight that it doesn't move when I pull it. Then if we look at it on this side again, same here. I'm going to just give this a little bit of a tug, and I'm not seeing any big gaps or tightness. It moves just a little bit, which is important because this is a garment. You want to be able to, you know, stretch it out to get it on over your head, but you can still see the color work really nicely. Nothing is pinching. So I'm done with my swatch. I'm going to go put it in a bowl of room temperature water with a little squeeze of wool wash. I'm going to let it sit for 15 minutes. I'm going to rinse it out. I'm going to roll it up in a towel, squeeze out the excess water. I'm going to lay it flat to dry. I'm not going to pull it and distort it to get it as big, even though you can manipulate something to be larger and or smaller with blocking. I'm going to let it lay naturally, and I'll probably let it lay that way for probably half a day, and then I'll flip it over. Since it's a two-sided piece of work, we want to make sure that it dries thoroughly on both sides. Then I am going to get my measuring tape. I'm going to lay it out on my swatch, and then I'm going to count exactly how many of these cute little V-shaped stitches that I get in 4 inches so that I can test my gauge. If I need to redo my swatch, I can always pull this out and start over on a different size needles. You might have to step up, you might have to step down. Once you determine the needle size, then it's time to cast on the neck, and I will see you there.